Y'all, this isn't a comeback story. This is the sound of a woman walking out of emotional wreckage while the world watches in stunned disbelief. After losing everything people thought defined her, Teyana Taylor didn't cry on camera. She didn't beg for sympathy. She didn't explain herself. She went quiet, the most dangerous move in celebrity culture. First, there was Iman Shumpert, marriage, family. A public love story fans truly believed in. Smiling photos, red carpets, and a bond that looked unbreakable. Then came the collapse. Divorce headlines. Carefully curated smiles hiding deep fractures. The internet said she'd be fine. Strong women always are until they aren't. Then came Aaron Pierre. A softer chapter, red carpets, lingering glances. The kind of chemistry that doesn't need captions or confirmation. Fans thought, this is it. Healing, peace, closure, but peace didn't last. Another breakup, another disappearance. No interviews. No explanations. Just silence with sadness seeping through cryptic captions. And then, without warning, everything changed. Teyana confirmed she's in a new relationship. No name, no face. No proof, just one chilling sentence. This time, I'm protecting my peace. That line detonated the internet. Comment sections turned into crime scenes. Fans became detectives. Screenshots were dissected. Reflections zoomed in. Private jets, luxury hotels, expensive watches. Then the narrative turned ugly. She upgraded. Another rich man. Gold digger energy. The same woman who poured her soul into a marriage. The same woman who risked love again and lost suddenly on trial. But here's the part nobody can explain. She didn't react. Not once. No denial. No defense. No tears. Just calm, cold, controlled silence. And that silence is terrifying. Because whispers from people close to the situation say this man isn't just rich. He's powerful, connected, and if his identity ever drops, certain faces in the industry won't survive it. This isn't just a relationship reveal. It's a ticking emotional bomb. The name is hidden. The truth is buried. But when it comes out, it won't be romance the internet talks about. It'll be destruction.
I'm doing that. Here it is, Ray. Don't move. Don't move.
In celebrity culture, silence is never empty. It is loaded. It waits, it watches. And when it breaks, it destroys narratives people thought were settled. This story doesn't begin with a romance. It begins with collapse. Before headlines reduced. Heard of speculation and timelines, Teyana Taylor was something rare in entertainment. Disciplined, private, intentional, a woman who built her image brick by brick and refused to sell chaos for clicks. That restraint earned respect. It also made what came next far more brutal. Her marriage to Iman Shumpert was marketed as balance. Two public figures navigating love without spectacle. Family photos, quiet pride, a sense that the chaos of celebrity had been kept outside the door. Fans believed it. Media leaned into it. The industry needed a functional love story. Then the door cracked. What the public saw first was distance, not scandal, subtle absences, fewer shared moments. The energy shifted before the language did. That's how these things usually start. By the time divorce headlines hit, the emotional damage had already been done off camera, and that's where the story turns dark. Because strength, when performed too long, becomes isolation. After the separation, Teyana didn't unravel publicly. She didn't weaponize interviews. She didn't flood social media with rage. She did something far more dangerous in a culture addicted to spectacle. She withdrew. Silence became her shield, but also her sentence. The internet doesn't forgive quiet women. It rewrites them. Speculation filled the gaps she refused to explain. Then came the rebound narrative. When Aaron Pierre entered the picture, the tone changed instantly. This wasn't chaos. It was softness, controlled appearances, minimal words, body language. Doing the talking, the kind of connection fans romanticize because it feels earned rather than advertised. People said she was healing. They said she deserved happiness. They said the pain was finally behind her. But healing, when rushed, has a way of reopening wounds instead of closing them. The relationship ended quietly, the same way it began. No public blame, no dramatic exits, just absence. And once again, Teyana disappeared into silence. No clarifications. No closure for the audience that had emotionally invested without permission. That silence became suspicious. Cryptic captions surfaced, a tired look behind the eyes. Posts that felt heavy without explanation. Observers began projecting their own theories. Sadness turned into narrative fuel. And once ignited, narrative fuel doesn't stop burning. Here's the problem with fame. When a woman doesn't explain her pain, people decide what caused it. And they rarely choose kindness. Months passed, the noise settled into background static. The internet moved on, or so it thought. Because while attention drifted elsewhere, something was forming quietly behind the scenes. Then came the confirmation. No press run, no exclusive interview, no photos. Just a statement a new relationship confirmed on her terms. And one line that changed everything. This time I'm protecting my peace. That sentence landed like a gavel in a courtroom that didn't realize a trial was happening. Protection implies threat. Peace implies previous violence, emotional or otherwise. And suddenly, nothing about this felt soft anymore. The absence of details became the story. No name, no face. No timeline. Just boundaries. And boundaries in celebrity culture are read as provocation. Fans didn't wait for facts, they hunted clues. Luxury locations were dissected. Jewelry became evidence. Reflections in glass turned into alleged sightings. Flights were tracked, associations mapped. The internet transformed into an unpaid surveillance unit. Convinced the truth was hiding in plain sight. Then the narrative crossed a line. She upgraded. She only dates rich men. She's chasing status, not love. The language shifted from curiosity to accusation. What made it worse was erasure. The same woman who had poured years into a marriage was reduced to caricature. The same woman who stayed quiet through heartbreak was suddenly framed as calculating. Silence was no longer strength, it was guilt, according to the court of public opinion. But here's what stopped industry insiders cold. She didn't respond. No subtweets, no clapbacks. No carefully crafted PR cleanup, nothing. And in gossip culture, silence after accusation is either collapse or control. People close to the situation began whispering that the secrecy wasn't about drama. It was about protection, not just of her heart, but of something larger. Something that didn't belong to the internet. Something that, if exposed prematurely, could have consequences far beyond comment sections. Theories multiplied. Some said the man wasn't in entertainment at all. Others claimed he was powerful enough to avoid visibility by design. A few hinted that once his identity surfaced, it would force uncomfortable conversations within elite circles that prefer darkness to daylight. Meanwhile, Teyana remained composed. No visible joy. No visible fear. Just calm that unsettled people conditioned to expect either celebration or collapse. Because when a woman stops performing emotion, it threatens the systems built to consume her pain. This wasn't a reveal. It was a refusal. A refusal to explain herself. A refusal to feed the machine. And that refusal has consequences. Because when the truth is withheld long enough, the reveal doesn't just inform it. Detonates. Part 1 of the story isn't about who the new man is. It's about why his identity matters so much that it's being protected at all costs. And if the whispers are accurate, when the name finally drops, it won't just shock fans. It will force a reckoning. This isn't a love story. It's the opening statement of a much darker chapter. And the court of public opinion hasn't even realized the trial has begun. The moment the confirmation hit, the internet didn't react, it lunged. Not with celebration, not with relief, but with suspicion sharpened into obsession. Because when Teyana Taylor confirmed a new relationship without offering proof, faces, or timelines, it violated an unspoken contract between celebrities and spectators. The public wasn't angry because she moved on. They were angry because she didn't ask permission. And that's when the tone shifted from curiosity to prosecution. Every past chapter was dragged back into evidence. Her marriage to Iman Shumpert was no longer remembered as love that failed, it was reframed as a strategic alliance. Old interviews were clipped, smiles were slowed down and dissected. Body language experts with no credentials suddenly had conclusions. She was never really happy, he was always holding her back, she outgrew him. None of it proven. All of it stated with confidence, Then the rebound chapter was reopened. Her time with Aaron Pure was reinterpreted not as healing but as a test run. Commentators began suggesting he was a placeholder, a narrative that reduced a real connection into a stepping stone towards something better. The implication was clear: love was never the point. Elevation was. And elevation in gossip culture always points to money and power. That's when the theories turned darker. Anonymous accounts began hinting that the new man wasn't famous. He was insulated, not seen because he couldn't afford to be. Not tagged because his world doesn't intersect with fan pages or red carpets. A man whose privacy wasn't aesthetic but enforced. Screenshots surfaced and vanished. Alleged sightings were posted, then deleted. Accounts went private overnight. Suddenly, people noticed something chilling. No leak stuck. In an industry where secrets are currency, this one refused to circulate, which meant someone somewhere was actively containing it. And containment implies leverage. As speculation intensified, so did the hostility. What began as "who's he?" mutated into "what is she hiding?" The language became loaded, accusatory, gendered. The same tropes resurfaced: opportunist, climber, manipulator. The internet dusted off its oldest scripts and recast her without hesitation. But here's the contradiction nobody wanted to confront. If this relationship was about clout, secrecy made no sense. If it was about status, anonymity was counterproductive. If it was about attention, silence was the wrong strategy. Unless attention was the one thing she was actively avoiding, observers close to the industry began whispering that the calm wasn't indifference, it was discipline. This wasn't a woman overwhelmed by chaos, but one deliberately starving it. The kind of restraint learned the hard way, after years of being dissected for survival choices made under pressure. And that's when the timeline started to matter. People noticed how quickly she withdrew after each emotional rupture, how consistently. She chose absence over explanation, how rarely she defended herself. Even when the narrative tilted against her, patterns emerged not of manipulation, but of withdrawal as self-preservation. Yet the internet doesn't reward restraint, it punishes it. Comment sections turned into mock trials. Influencers monetized. Speculation. Podcasts built episodes around sources who never spoke on record. The story metastasized beyond her control. Still, nothing from her. No correction, no clarification, no visible stress. That absence began to feel intentional. Because silence, when sustained under attack, isn't weakness, it's a statement. One that says the truth doesn't need witnesses yet.
Oh, don't move, you're moving. Don't move.
Behind the scenes, something else was happening. Industry figures stopped engaging publicly with the speculation. Posts were deleted, mentions avoided. It was as if an unspoken line had been drawn and crossed only once. After that, the topic became radioactive. Why? Because according to those paying attention, this wasn't just about a relationship. It was about proximity, about access, about a world where certain names don't circulate casually because they come with consequences. And that's where the fear crept in. If the man was powerful enough to remain unseen, what did exposure actually threaten? Careers, partnerships, reputations built on discretion. The narrative flipped again from "who is he?" to "why are people afraid to say?" That question is the one nobody wants answered. Meanwhile, Teyana's demeanor never cracked. She appeared measured, focused, almost detached. Not joyful in a performative way, not defensive, just centered. A posture that unsettled people conditioned to expect. Emotional collapse. Because women who don't break on schedule disrupt the spectacle, and disruption invites backlash. Critics escalated. They framed her silence as arrogance, avoidance, proof of something sinister. The same calm that suggested control was reframed as coldness. Strength became threat, but the more aggressively the narrative pressed, the more obvious. One thing became, she wasn't playing the same game. This wasn't a rollout. This wasn't a rebrand. This wasn't damage control. It was containment. And containment only exists when something needs protection. The irony is brutal. The internet demanded transparency from a woman who had already paid for visibility with her piece. They wanted access to something she had clearly decided was no longer public property, and that decision has consequences. Because when the reveal eventually happens, and it won't land as gossip. It will land as disruption. The kind that forces people to reconsider every assumption they've made along the way. This isn't about romance anymore. It's about power dynamics, about who gets to disappear, about who is allowed to protect themselves without being punished for it. And as the noise grows louder, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. Whatever this relationship represents, it was never meant for public consumption. And the longer it stays hidden, the more explosive the fallout will be when it surfaces. Because secrets don't stay buried forever. They wait. The breaking point didn't arrive with a name, it arrived with fear. By now, this story had outgrown gossip. It was no longer about who Teyana Taylor was dating. It was about who suddenly didn't want to be mentioned at all. Something changed in the ecosystem. Accounts that had aggressively speculated went silent. Threads vanished. Influencers who promised exclusive drops quietly pivoted to safer topics. And that's when it became clear. This wasn't being ignored anymore. It was being avoided. In celebrity culture, avoidance is a tell. Because clout-chasing stories don't scare people into silence, power does. Behind closed doors, the tone shifted from excitement to caution. Publicists stopped returning calls. Bloggers hedged language. Phrases like allegedly and unconfirmed multiplied overnight. Even the loudest voices began to whisper. Why? Because the closer people got to the truth, the more resistance they met. And resistance implies boundaries enforced by something stronger than public opinion. The irony is sharp. For years, Teyana had been framed as resilient but accessible. Woman whose life could be parsed, judged, and consumed. Her marriage to Iman Shumpert had been public enough to invite commentary, but controlled enough to maintain dignity. When it ended, she paid the price quietly. No scorched earth, no public warfare. Then came the second chapter. Her time with Aaron Pierre was treated like a rebound by outsiders who needed a neat narrative. When that ended too, the audience felt entitled to answers she never agreed to give. What followed was punishment. The internet doesn't punish people for being wrong, it punishes them for withholding access. So when she confirmed a new relationship without offering details, it wasn't read as maturity. It was read as defiance. And defiance, especially from women who refuse to perform vulnerability, triggers a familiar response. Interrogate her, discredit her, reduce her. But something went wrong with that plan. She didn't fold. No defensive post, no emotional monologues, no leaks to soften perception. Just continued silence, and silence, when paired with confidence, unnerved systems built on exposure. As the weeks passed, a new realization crept in. This wasn't a woman hiding something scandalous. This was a woman shielding something valuable. The speculation shifted again. This time it wasn't about money or fame, it was about proximity. About circles that don't overlap with entertainment gossip. About people whose names aren't searchable because their influence operates offline. That's when the word protected started surfacing in private conversations. Not protected by PR, protected by structure. And that distinction matters because PR manages perception. Structure enforces consequences. If this man existed within a world where anonymity is power, exposure wouldn't be inconvenient, it would be disruptive. Not to fans, but to systems that prefer invisibility. Which explains the strangest development of all. Nothing leaked. No photos from insiders, no blurry club shots. No friend of a friend confirmations. In an era where secrets survive minutes, this one survived months. That alone is evidence of something different. Meanwhile, Teyana's public presence grew sharper, not louder. Her appearances were deliberate, her language measured. She spoke about peace without explaining how hard it had been to earn. She didn't sell happiness. She modeled boundaries, and that made people uncomfortable because the audience isn't trained to accept closure without disclosure. They want the arc, the lesson, the emotional climax. But she refused to provide it. So the internet tried to write its own ending. They framed her calm as calculation, her privacy as manipulation, her refusal to explain as arrogance. But none of it stuck, because there was no contradiction to exploit, no public mistake, no visible crack. And that's when the narrative lost momentum. Stories thrive on reaction. Outrage feeds on response. Without it, even the most aggressive. Speculation starves. The story didn't end. It's stalled, which is far more dangerous. Stalled narratives don't resolve. They wait. Industry observers began suggesting that when the truth finally surfaces, it won't be through gossip channels. It will arrive sideways in a context nobody expects. Through an association, not an announcement. Through consequence, not confession. And when it does, it will force a reevaluation of everything that came before it. Why the silence mattered, why the secrecy was non-negotiable, why certain people chose distance over commentary. This isn't a reveal waiting for a headline, it's a reckoning waiting for timing. And here's the uncomfortable truth beneath it all. Teyana Taylor didn't lose control of her story. She took it back at the cost of being misunderstood, at the cost of being accused, at the cost of public comfort. Because control doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it looks like restraint under fire. The internet wanted spectacle. She offered nothing, and in doing so, she exposed something far more unsettling than any name ever could: the limits of access. Because when a public figure decides their life is no longer communal property, the backlash isn't about curiosity. It's about entitlement being revoked. This story isn't unresolved because information is missing. It's unresolved because consent was withdrawn. And until that consent is given again, if it ever is, the speculation will remain suspended in discomfort, not knowing. Waiting because the most destabilizing truth of all is this: some stories don't belong to the audience. And this one was never meant to. This is the moment the story stops being entertainment and starts feeling personal. What you're watching isn't a celebrity protecting a relationship. It's Teyana Taylor refusing to bleed for an audience that already decided how they judge her. Every silence, every boundary, every unanswered accusation is a reminder that betrayal doesn't always come from lovers. Sometimes it comes from the crowd that swore they supported you. The internet turned her heartbreak into contour, restraint into suspicion, her healing into interrogation. And now, with the truth still hidden, the same voices demanding transparency are the ones who weaponized her past, marriage reduced to failure, lover framed as strategy, pain treated like proof of guilt. This isn't curiosity anymore. It's punishment for choosing peace over performance. Here's what makes this dangerous. If the reveal comes, it won't satisfy anyone. If it doesn't, the speculation will never stop. Either way, she pays the price. That's the trap. Woman survives betrayal, learns restraint, chooses silence, and is still accused of deception. The audience doesn't want truth. It wants access, and when access is denied, it retaliates. So ask yourself this before the next headline drops. Who benefits from her exposure? Who profits from her pain? Who keeps pushing narratives while she stays silent? Because when this finally breaks, and it will, the shock won't come from a name. It will come from realizing how quickly empathy was replaced by entitlement, how easily support turned into surveillance, how comfort was demanded from someone who already gave too much. This isn't a love story waiting for confirmation. It's a warning about what happens when boundaries threaten an industry built on consumption. Watch closely, not for the reveal, but for who disappears when the truth arrives.